Welcome back to The Table, a podcast from Lifeline Children's Services. I'm your host, Rick Morton. This is part 2 of our conversation with Anna Leah Jolly, Miss Mississippi, dance studio owner, author, and adoption advocate. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, I'd encourage you to start there. Anna Leah shared the incredible story of how she was adopted from Ukraine at age 11 and the faith journey that followed. In this second half, we go deeper. Anna Leah opens up about how her adoption story became a platform, Limitless, or Empower to Connect, and how competing for Miss Mississippi gave her a stage to share it. We also talk honestly about the pressures adoptive families face, the role of the gospel in building real connection, and the resources she's created to help parents and children navigate the hard stuff together. There is so much wisdom in this conversation. Pull up a chair one more time. Here's part 2.
It's just like super simple steps where like, okay, you can use to connect with your children. There's little games you can print out and just more on like an emotional intelligence level where eventually they might can build some trust to share trauma so you can understand why they do the things they do or feel the way they feel.
I love it.
Which would have helped my parents and I the first year.
Yeah.
Because like I actually hated ballet. They put me in ballet. I couldn't speak English to tell them not to do ballet. Because that felt like trauma. It was like soreness and building muscle. That felt like abuse. I was like, this is horrible. So that was traumatic for me. And so anyway, and then I did that. And then turns out CASA got a grant. So I happened to get a grant for $5,000 that year to use it towards getting the books about it. I also wrote a children's book for the kids about emotional intelligence, about the emotion wheel. It kind of goes with the website. So now like the parents have a tool and the kids have a tool and hopefully they can put the two together and connect. And so then CASA was like of Hinds counties, actually specifically, they were like, let's use this grant to every court, like every court that we have, every kid that comes through our system, they can get a book that talks about emotional intelligence. So then it just kind of started piling from there. I was like, great Lord, like what else? And then God like made it evident that I was going to win Miss Mississippi. Like I did not know, like I didn't think it was going to be possible, but I started prepping for Miss America because they moved Miss America to September. And this was like, I don't know, this was like January or something. I was like, okay, I think I'm going to win Miss Mississippi. Not because I think, but I think like this is where God has me to go. And I'm going to prep for Miss America. I'm not even going to prep for Mississippi anymore. And then I started asking, okay, the bigger questions of like, okay, so if I am Miss America and I wanted to like speak at the White House or speak at our like USA embassy, like what would I like do? How would I, like if I was to go to other countries and share, like what would I do? So God was like, girl, you have a giant story. And it's not just about like, so limitless sounds like a word that's like, oh, you can do anything. And, you know, it's just like this cheesy slogan. No, like the whole heart about limitless is not self-confidence. It is God confidence. It is confidence that God can do anything through you. And my story is just an example of a girl that was literally an orphan 12 years ago, was standing on the Miss America stage, competing like for a title that like literally in the middle of Ukraine going through a war. I was just thinking about the bigger picture and what I wanted my legacy to look like. And I wanted it to be just this, like being able to share my story, share God's story, really, and then give people hope that like your kid is God's child. Don't worry about their success. Worry about what kind of character they have, because God's going to do the rest. I actually, because I won Miss Mississippi, right before, like a month before the competition, I asked Belhaven University, which is a private school. It's basically like a little, I would call it Harvard of Mississippi. They're really hard to get into, but they're really good. And it's also an art school, which is kind of cool for what I do. And I never saw myself going to college. I literally did this for a political reason. I was like, I'm going to try to get Belhaven as a sponsor for Miss Mississippi, or like as donating money or a scholarship or something. And I ended up using the scholarships I got for top 5. I did not go to school. I started my dance studio first. Just knew that I wanted to like own a dance studio, and I had the brains and the skill for it. I didn't think I needed the piece of paper to, you know, tell people that I know how to do my job, but in America, we kind of have to have that. But I just remember like, okay, I'm just going to use a little bit of that money and just take a few classes. And I ended up going to Bellhaven for just a few classes. I took like 3, and they were mostly dance classes. I did not know you had to write papers in dance, but you do. And I made some friends in high places, and I asked them, would you give Miss Mississippi a bigger scholarship or a full ride? And they said, we don't do that. We don't do that to our football players. We don't do that to anybody. We don't, I mean, if you make a 36, we don't do that on your ACT. Like, we don't care. They said no. And then once I won, they were like, oh, heck yeah. We never had a girl win from our college before. So you get a full ride every Miss Mississippi after you, and they also get a free master's.
Wow.
So it was kind of funny because, like, it's so easy to worry about success, right? And it's like, I'm not saying that like school is going to bring success, but it's like God was telling my parents, like, I got her. Like, I'm going to take care of her. You focus on raising her. You know what I mean? Because some people are like so immersed in all the grades and all the stuff. And so Miss Mississippi got me, I would say, full ride. But me getting to Miss Mississippi was my story, God's story. So, and then also gave me the opportunity to share the gospel. Like, think how many people I meet every single day, how many students have never heard the gospel. We live in a southern state, and you would think, but no, that's not the case, or they've heard it in a different way. And it's interesting to look, like, have kids come up to you or adults come up to you and say, like, you know, I've lived here my whole life, and I've never heard a girl that's like close to my age say anything like you said. And it's so fun to like see their whole life change, you know, like in front of your eyes. And again, like, all the glory goes to God. And it's just like, yes. So to answer your question, it's like a pageant, really. Like, a pageant has such a stigma with Miss USA and Miss America. Thank goodness, Miss America organization is a little bit more modest. We focus on community service. That is what we focus. But I did not know that, like, even community service, that can be selfish within itself. So I was just like really praying of like, God, I want your legacy, not my legacy. Like, what do you want this to look like? And through me like praying about everything, he just kind of like laid it out. And it wasn't not the whole deck, but card by card. And that helped me a lot because that also built my relationship with the Lord. You know, trust issues are really a big thing for me. So to see God come through every single time. And, you know, I'm sorry, this is like kind of a quick thing, but just to any kid that's like adopted or watching this that maybe have gone through the foster care system, I think it's hard. Like, I feel like we are always striving to prove ourselves to the world that like we're worth something and that we're going to be successful. And I think for me, it was really hard, like, to not enter this pageant, not wanting that, you know, not wanting the success or the I don't know, I guess the crown, whatever. But through it all, I even, I literally just did it because I wanted to, at first, I kind of did it to bring a name to my studio and just be like, oh, Miss Mississippi owns a dance studio. Surprisingly, like, throughout my whole year, people signed up, but it wasn't because they heard that I was Miss Mississippi. And I was kind of like thinking like, okay, God, so did you only have like 1 year of success for me? And like, this is it? Like, do I do anything else? Like, can you use my story for anything else? Or is it just because I'm Miss Mississippi? Is that the only reason people will listen? And you know what I mean? Like, but you think about these things.
I do, but I think it's funny because we love to hear your story, and it has nothing to do with you being Miss Mississippi.
But I was thinking that I was like, God, like, what else? And then I got reached out by my business manager that, I don't know if y'all know who, oh my goodness, I forgot her name. Give me a second, I'm sorry. But anyway, this lady that runs a news station, she's like pretty well known. She wants Maggie Wade.
Okay, yeah.
So I got news that Maggie Wade wants to interview me at my dance studio. And it's going to be aired like when I'm giving up my title on the night. And I was like, God, thank you for answering my prayer, because I'm thinking like, oh, I have to do all these things. But God's like, no, like, I'm asking you to walk this path and that's it. And I'll provide the rest as you're obedient, and your reward will come on the other side of things, which for me is something hard to like grasp, because, you know, we're all kids at heart and we don't know where this is going, you know? So it was hard for me to like be positive every step of the way.
I just want to kind of press into something you said, because you talked about this idea of like needing to perform, needing to succeed, like needing to prove yourself over and over again. But and I know, just from even my conversations with my own kids, that's a reality of something that kind of lives there all the time.
Yes.
But I think one of the things that's been a really incredible balance to that is what we talked about earlier, which is seeing all those places where God has orchestrated steps and shown up and shown out in ways that build our confidence that
It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it doesn't rest on us.
Yeah.
And so
I think
talk about that a little bit.
I think like the parents also feel that. It's like, okay, we adopted this kid and we have the pressure of like, okay, we're a good family or like we're good parents or, oh yeah, because like think about it, like the one thing that combines us all, that unites us all is football, right? So like every conversation that we have is all like, it's like its own religion, right? It's like, so did you see like the Knicks did this or whatever, like we're talking about football all the time. It's like a way of like fakely connecting to someone. And I feel like with parents, it's a little bit the same thing with school or with your career. It's like, oh yeah, my kid is going to such and such school. And like even whenever we met one of your co-workers, we were talking about her son going to Belhaven, right? So like football is just like a big conversation starter. And I feel like for the parents, there's such a pressure of like, oh, well, whenever I see other parents, I don't want, I want to be impressive or like that we raised our kid to go to this and this or this is the career they're going into. So it's so hard to still not be influenced by the world, even as a Christian.
Yeah. I know and this is honestly from the example of my wife, but she's talked about not just being the mom of kids that didn't grow up in the same culture and kind of see things differently, but also some kids with some special needs. And so there's a part of where when our family shows up, we can't help but we're different.
Stand out.
Yeah, like we can't blend in really well. And that can be really tough at times, I think, and also I think there's a sense in which we, even when we don't stand out, we think we do. Like we think that there's a spotlight on flaws or differences or things like that, and that other people are aware of things that they're not, right?
The biggest piece of advice anyone's ever given me, and it's like forever stuck in my mind, was my ballet teacher. He said, I was doing some kind of thing and I think I kind of fell out of it or like I kind of was doing a leap or something. It didn't work out. And I made a face like, oh, it didn't work out. And he said, what are you doing? And I guess this is a Christian ballet school, right?
Right.
And he's like, why did you make that face? And I was like, well, because I messed up.
Yeah.
And he's like, so what? You messed up. And I'm like, well, people are going to care. Like, this is a performance. They're paying for a performance. And he was like, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares. So he was like saying that like you thinking that all eyes on you is so selfish, or like he was telling me this, like you're being actually selfish because you think that everyone's watching you out of 150 dancers that are on stage. Nobody cares, Anna Leah. Get over yourself. And I was like, okay, that kind of hit hard. But then I'm realizing everyone has so much of their own craft that they're going through in life. They're not worried about you.
Yeah.
Like they're more worried about what's happening in their life. So a little bit, you can't focus on that.
But I think especially in families that have been built through adoption, that difference really, like sometimes we feel like that's the thing that gets the spotlight and that's the thing that gets the attention. And I think it can be that can be a really difficult thing to battle for a lot of families. And I think it becomes part of the complexity that ends up making it hard.
Yes.
Because we're so concerned about what everybody else thinks.
And I had to learn even this year, like whatever you are preparing for, like whether that is adopting a child or competing for something or entering something big in your life, like a big change or planning a wedding or something like that's just going to be different in your life. You have to start looking at it's a race of endurance. It really is. And once you achieve that, once you adopt the kid or once you win the title, whatever it is, there's no break. You got to keep going. Now you got to race the kid, right? So through everything that you're going through, you have to look at it as a blessing instead of a curse.
Right.
But it's so easy to look at our circumstances and be like, oh, this is such a curse. This is such like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with X, Y, and Z. But if you start looking at every little thing, it's like, oh, this is a blessing. Like I get to do this. Like this person gets to be part of my family, or like, hey, okay, like Lord, give me the renewed strength to keep going. And I think that mindset shift helps me a lot every day.
I was telling somebody today, I think that you look at the life of the Apostle Paul, right? Nothing turned out the way Paul thought it was going to. And yet his life was used to be influential to take the gospel to the known world. But God did that because he ended up in jail in Rome, not because he got to be the one that actually got to do it. And I think, we sometimes, we try to play the movie out in our mind and how it's going to work and how the twists and turns are going to be. But we don't usually write pain into that story. We don't usually write difficulty into that story. And one of those things that I say to a lot of adoptive families is there is going to be pain and there's going to be brokenness in your story because you didn't get here to start the story there without it. And that's just real, and we can't try to deny that. We can't try to, make it untrue. The only thing that makes all that stuff untrue ultimately is the gospel.
Yeah. You always have to pick your hard, right?
Right.
Life is hard without Jesus.
Yep.
But life is also hard with Jesus. Which one do you want to go? Because both is going to be hard.
That's a good word.
You got to pick your hard.
Yeah, you just talked about the importance of prayer, right? Like the people that were praying for your mom and dad and for you as you were in the process of your adoption, people that have prayed for you as Miss Mississippi, people that have prayed for you for all kind of things. I think one of the lessons that our family has learned is we were really good about sharing our story and about bringing people around us to pray before our adoption and when we got to the point of our kids coming home. We didn't necessarily really value for a long time continuing to have people praying with us and cultivating that community of prayer. And I think one of the things that kind of gets messed up sometimes in the lives of adopted parents is we're told to be careful. We're told that, and I think this is right, we're told that our kids' story is their story. It's not ours. And so, my kids, their story is not mine to tell unless they give me permission, I think, to tell parts of it.
I'm very close with one of my friends, and she kind of shared some of the things that it was actually her family, just the rules and all the things. And she was like, it was impossible to keep. It was kind of like the commandments.
Yeah.
It was just impossible to not break them all. And then the parents would say stuff like, oh, well, we adopted you, so you owe us. Or they would just say things that made them insecure and uncomfortable. And I was just like, wow, my parents never did that. And I was like, thank God. I was like, my parents are awesome. Comparing lives, I guess. But now I'm just realizing I'm so glad that my parents kind of took a step out of it, because they could have also been tempted with just look at the negatives and everything. And also your life is not supposed to be under or for display or under a microscope for everybody. But there is that healthy, hey, being vague, but telling people
Absolutely.
I need this or I need that. But just those parents are just so comfortable because they just went through all of this adoption together. And a lot of us were adopted literally months apart, weeks apart. And so they were just trauma bonding with everything.
It is, and trauma bonding is the word. I think that's really important that you said that, because I think it's true. And I think, we've experienced in churches some really beautiful things. And the beautiful was around the fact that we had adoptive parents and parents that were parents through foster care who came together and they supported each other through the hard. But the intentionality stayed on the fact that we're doing this because we want to support each other in who Jesus is and in what God's called us into. And so there was always scripture and prayer and a focus on things, and our kids never became the bad guy. And I think one of the things that can really, really happen is that we get into these very difficult circumstances. We're not able to communicate well. We're not able to understand one another. There's so much complexity to it. And on both sides, kids and parents start seeing each other as the bad guy.
My parents never wanted me to feel like they were forcing it on me. But they did, however, live their life Their life was the gospel. We would always have, if you walk into our house, and it's kind of funny because my boyfriend of 4 years says this like when we first met, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. When he walks into our house, he sees that there's like CC Winings playing in the background. There's always Christian music or something's on, and that's so different from like your normal household.
Sure.
And yes, they read the Bible, but they never were like, Anna Leah, you need to read your Bible. Like they never said that ever actually once to me. It was always they were living out the life, and then they were just hoping that I would observe and follow in that, and then that worked out. But I just think that some parents are just like, oh, I want them to be a Christian.
Yeah. And you do, like, right? Like that's the great hope in all of this.
I think the more we're talking, I'm realizing that adoption and actual parenting has there's barely any differences.
And I think, again, as a parent, like part of what's playing with your mind and all that is that you're worried about all the stuff you didn't get to invest. And like all the things that you didn't get to be a part of. And I think, I don't know if I have permission to share what I'm about to share, but I'm gonna say it because I think it was like a really, it was like a really salient moment in our daughter's this is in our daughter's adoption. And so when we were in court, the judge was Orthodox and basically didn't believe that anybody that was not Orthodox is Christian.
Okay.
And so she said to our daughter about me, you know what he does for a living? I was a pastor at the time. And she said, you know what that means? And she was trying to make the point that if our daughter was going to come into our family, then I was going to force Jesus and the way we see Jesus and the way we understand Jesus, that was going to be forced upon her, and she was going to be made to conform to something. And nothing could have been further from the truth. Like the truth is that she and all of our kids, and it's like we want them to see the truth of the gospel and respond to it, not to be coerced into something. But I think there's a thing with parents that there's this, like we feel this pressure sometimes that we have to add to what God's doing. Like we have to somehow like kind of push and participate. And I've seen adoptive family after adoptive family where that turns into just an overwhelming negative.
If your whole focus is the kids need to be this, and that, then that becomes your focus. And then of course, then it's not going to work because that's not how God designed it to be. So I think a lot of families forget that when it comes to adoption, because adoption is so much, it's such an overstimulation, and there's so much to focus on, or we think that there's so much to focus on because there's trauma and our trauma and language barriers and school and success, education, all the things, right?
Yes.
So we feel like there's an overwhelming weight on our shoulders that everything has to be perfect. But in reality, it is just the same umbrella that God has created for any family. Yes. It is God, the bigger umbrella, the husband, and then the wife, and then she has the kids, and under, you know what I mean? It's all this one big thing. And hey, if we get distracted, it's going to lead.
And the reality, I was just going to say, going back to Limitless and going back to that thought and your platform, the idea that it's not that we're limitless, it's that God is limitless, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes the pressure is that we want to pressure people from the outside to conform. It's like we want to put people in a mold and squeeze them into being something. But the story of the gospel is that transformation happens from the inside out, not from the outside in. It's when God does a work in the heart based upon what Jesus has done and based upon us, and our acceptance and our walk with that God then begins to do things in us. And I just think that was such a beautiful part of your story as you and I've talked, is that you've continued to point back and say that, hey, all of this it's not necessarily about what my parents did right or wrong. They did some things right, they did some things wrong. It's not necessarily even about what I did right or what I did wrong. But it's about the fact that I had a moment with Jesus that changed my life, and it really did change my life.
And I don't know why, but as you're talking, it like came to my mind, and I'm just like, okay, maybe the Lord wants me to share it. The first experience I've ever had really sharing my story was this guy from our church, and he was leading a group where you have to have like a certain amount of hours if you wanted to adopt or if you want to foster. And it was from Crossgates, and he invited me to be one of the speakers, and he was like, I want you to share your story. And it was a family that asked me that adopted a girl from Ukraine, crazy, adopted a girl from Ukraine. I know, like, I think Mississippi is like big on that. We're staying on brand here.
Yeah.
They asked, I feel like my kid doesn't love me, or they said something like, how do you feel loved by your child? Which I thought was kind of a big question for me, because I think I was like 21 at the time. And she was like, I feel like my kid doesn't love me, and I don't know what to do with that. And how do I feel that, or how do I get over it? And I was like, and I don't know why, but it's like God gave me, bam, like a thought on it. And it was, my first question was, is she a Christian? And they said, I don't think so. And I was like, well, if God is love, then, and that's just like what parents maybe sometimes miss, is like they want to feel like that true, genuine connection, that love that comes from, and this is what I talked about. It's like, you cannot mistake scientific attachment, which is what happens when you give birth. To like, you just have this scientific connection that God technically created, right? So if you feel like your kid is not a Christian, it's gonna be hard to feel that like strong connection. So, and it's same vice versa. So for me, like, I think our first year of me not really grasping the gospel, it was very hard for us to connect. But as soon as I did, everything changed, because now I'm like, I understand how to receive it and give it, because now I have it. Like, it's hard to give something you don't have.
Sure.
So if you feel like, oh, the kid that you adopted doesn't like give love, it's because they may not have it. And it's like, it's not your job to make sure that they're a Christian or whatever, but it is your job to like make every possibility, available for them to see you follow through in your walk with the Lord. And that's what my parents did.
Well, our responsibility as people, but our responsibility as parents before God is to love and conduct ourselves in the way that God loves. And how many times do we not respond to God in love as His children, and kids that are not, those who are not following Jesus, right?
It's gonna be hard, because you're trying to, like, that's like marrying someone who doesn't love Jesus. Like, it's hard to. Also, I mean, you can actually put marriage and adopting kind of similar, because you got to think like it's somebody you didn't grow up with, right?
Right.
So like, it is so easy to look at like your wife probably and be like, oh, I wish I had all those times with you together, like all those those trips and your developmental years, right? But now I just get like this half of your life with with me,
Right.
and it's so easy to like feel like that FOMO. It's so easy to feel that, but. And the truth is, you probably didn't want to see, that side of your life yet. And
or vice versa.
Vice versa.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
I mean, God has such a plan, and if God is like leading you to meet that child, to like adopt that child or foster, He does not care about what happened in the past. Like, He only cares about what He is giving you right now.
That's right.
But I mean, it is so like, it's so interesting. You can look at like marriage like that as well, because. I mean, you didn't know that person before you like committed to that person.
So if you had the opportunity today, right now, if there were a child that walked in the door here that's walking into a family and is being brought into a family through adoption, what would you say?
I would probably share my story.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so important for a kid to feel like, oh, someone's been through this, like someone. Because I actually felt so alone and so like, oh, no one understood me. Like, I was that weird kid from Ukraine, and just like share my story for sure with them and everything that we've kind of talked about here. But also like share the gospel, because the gospel is the bigger part of the story. And hopefully, the kids that are going into these families, they're Christian families, And if that is the case, to tell them that, like, hey, they love Jesus, that means they know how to love. And so you're in really good hands. Because if you're getting adopted by people that really know how to love, you're going to be okay.
That's awesome. Tell folks again how they can find your resources and how they can find your website. And
so www.limitlesspower2connect.com.
Okay.
Limitless Power to Connect is a website that's just about emotion wheel, and just honestly super simple. You can play different like emotional games with your kids. It's kind of like emotional charades. I don't know if that's a thing, but it is now. Has my story a little bit on there. And it's just for the parents to be like, okay, you're not alone. Someone else has been through this. And then Barnes & Noble, if you type my name and Anna Leah Jolly, I have 2 children's books out there. One is called Anna Leah, the Limitless Ballerina. It's about like achieving your dreams. I started dance at 12 and I was told I would never make it professionally, but I did it anyway. And so that tells you like, if God has something for you, it'll happen. And then the other book is called Theodore, the Little Bear with Big Feelings. And that's the one that goes with the website. It talks about this little guy a little bear that gets adopted and everything's new and he doesn't know what to do with all these emotions. And the mom in the story introduces the emotion wheel and kind of walks him through with how to use it. And then in the back of the book, there's a super complex version of the emotion wheel, and it like talks you step by step how to like talk to the child about what they're looking at. And then there's also like a more fun, playful version of it as well, just depending on your age level.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think, for so many families, they're looking for resources and looking for things to be helpful. And
I think I need to write like a life story, like
absolutely.
a memoir.
I think you should. We, there's a movie in there too.
Oh, good.
But I think, literally giving, because it's so hard sometimes for kids to have the words to use or to really match, what's going on emotionally with what they're able to communicate.
I looked at therapy as a bad thing. Like, actually, my parents tried to take me to therapy when they first adopted me, and I was like, okay, great. They think something needs to be fixed within me. Like, they don't like me. I had all these thoughts, and I was like, oh, I hate therapy, But I wanted, because I think I was just thrown into it and not explained what it was. So that's why I came up with the website and the book. It's because I want them to come to terms with kind of doing what's natural, which is reading a book and looking at a story that's like maybe similar to theirs. And then realizing, oh, we're doing therapy, but it's not scary, it's just questions or it's just like you getting to share about yourself, I just wanted kids to feel like safe about doing it. And then hopefully the parents feel more comfortable with asking questions, because my parents had a hard time with that. They didn't want to offend me or bring any memories back. So they had a very hard time asking me questions that would have been very helpful. And so if my parents had that resource, I think it would have been great for us. That's just kind of why it's out there.
No, I love that. And I think, that's very real. And I think, there's no instruction book to this, and we're just kind of working our way through it. And so I love the fact that from your perspective, you're producing helpful tools and helping us to think about, what you would have wanted. And so it provides something for a lot of other kids that, that it's something that they get to have. And so thanks for using your story in that way.
But, the manual really is the Bible. Like, if you want to learn anything on how to do something, is the Bible. Like, if you want to learn how to have any kind of relationship, the Bible tells you how.
You preach.
There is a manual.
That's it. That's good. Well, and
this is the only source. Just kidding.
And I love the fact that you continue to reinforce over and over and over that this is really about, God and His power.
Well, I wish I could say there's anything else, but there's not. It's just the one thing.
Well, and God's gracious to us in making it that simple, right? Well, Anna Leah Jolly, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is amazing. And folks, thanks for joining us and pulling up a chair to the table. And we'll continue to be here and continue to have these kind of conversations, and look forward to having Anna Leah back at some point for us to talk a little bit more about what God's doing with her. But we encourage you to go check out her website and to refer other people to this conversation, because I think there's a lot here for a lot of adoptive families and things that can be incredibly helpful. But I'm Rick Morton, your host, and we thank you for joining us at the table.